My name is Emily Carter, and I am 30 years old. A week ago, surgeons cut into my abdomen to remove what they called a silent killer. I returned home with stitches that burned like fire across my stomach, every breath tugging at them, every shift of my body threatening to tear me open again. The doctor warned me any sudden strain could cause internal bleeding. That evening, I lay on the couch in our living room surrounded by shadows, the faint smell of antiseptic drifting from my hospital bag. My lips were dry and cracked. I swallowed, but my throat ached with thirst. All I wanted was a glass of water. My sister stood in the doorway, her face glowing blue from her phone. This was the same sister I once held when storms shook our broken house, the girl I shielded from our father's drunken rages, the one I promised our dying mother I would always protect. I whispered, "Could you bring me some water?" She did not move. My chest tightened. "Please," I said again, my voice breaking. Then she strode across the floor, her steps quick and sharp, and before I could prepare, her hand lashed across my face. The sound cracked like a gunshot. My head whipped to the side, fire seared across my cheek, and agony shot through the fresh wound in my abdomen. I gasped, clutching the scar, terrified that blood would spill through my gown. For one sickening second, I thought I might actually die right there on the couch, and over that fear came her scream. "We are not your servants!" The words cut deeper than her slap, vibrating in my bones, echoing in the house like a curse. My vision swam. I stared at her, my sister, but she looked like a stranger, her face twisted in contempt. "You think your sickness makes you queen of this house. Do not expect me to wait on you." Her voice was sharp, cold, final. My heart pounded so fast I thought the stitches would burst. Shame and terror collided inside me. This was the same house bought with the insurance money our mother left when cancer stole her life. She had whispered to me in her final days, "Family must protect each other when I am gone." Yet here in the home, her death had paid for. I was struck like a beggar and told I was nothing. My cheek burned where her hand had landed, the heat lingering as if she had branded me. My body shook not just from pain, but from the realization that the love I thought unbreakable had been shattered forever. In that moment, one truth crystallized. The slap was not only meant to silence me, it was meant to erase me. And if I did not find a way to fight back my sister's cruelty, would consume everything my mother had sacrificed to leave behind. Our story did not begin with that slap. To understand how deep the wound cut, you need to know where we came from. When I was only 12 and my sister Hannah was 14, our mother passed away after a long battle with cancer. She had been the center of our world, and her death left behind not only grief, but also a large life insurance policy. Our father was a broken man who drowned himself in alcohol and disappeared most nights, leaving us to raise ourselves. I became the one who held things together. I promised our mother at her hospital bed that I would protect Hannah and make sure she had a better life. The money from the insurance became both a blessing and a burden. It paid for the house we live in, the roof that was supposed to keep us safe, the home our mother had dreamed would shelter us when she was gone. I was too young to understand the weight of that promise, but I clung to it, believing love and loyalty would bind us together. As we grew older, I worked part-time jobs, bought school supplies for Hannah, and made sure she never felt the absence of our mother as sharply as I did. When our father abandoned us completely, I was the one who handled bills and cooked meals, the one who listened when Hannah cried at night. I wanted her to believe we still had a family. Years passed, and Hannah always accepted my help. She went to college partly because I sacrificed my own plans. I stayed behind, working double shifts, dipping into the insurance savings to cover her tuition when scholarships fell short. She promised she would never forget what I had done. She promised when she had stability, she would take care of me in return. Those words carried me through endless nights at work and long days of exhaustion. When she married and later lost her job, I was the one who gave her money to start fresh. I used the last of my savings, telling myself family comes first. Whenever she stumbled, I carried her weight without complaint. I told myself that was what our mother wanted. Now, lying broken after surgery in the very house our mother's death had purchased, I saw what those sacrifices had built. Hannah did not see me as a sister to be loved, but as a resource to be drained until empty. The slap was not sudden cruelty, it was the mask falling away. Looking back, I realized the signs had been there: her casual remarks that I owed her, her complaints when I asked for small help, the way she took money without gratitude, always with expectation. Yet I ignored them because I believed blood would hold us together. That night, as pain spread through my body and her words echoed in my ears, I understood that loyalty had been one-sided. The family I had fought to preserve no longer existed. In its place stood something twisted, a sister who saw me as nothing more than a burden. And in that knowledge, a spark of resistance began to burn. The first days after coming home from the hospital should have been filled with rest and gentle care, but instead they became a series of small humiliations that cut deeper than the surgical wound itself. On the second morning, my throat felt like sandpaper, and I asked Hannah again for water. She rolled her eyes and waved her hand as though brushing off an insect. "You have legs," she said coldly. "Get it yourself." I tried to sit up, but the pain in my abdomen screamed through me, forcing me back down with tears in my eyes. She watched unimpressed, then turned back to her phone. Later, when the pain medicine made me dizzy, I asked her if she could help me find the bottle of pills the doctor had prescribed. She tossed it on the couch beside me so hard the container popped open and scattered tablets onto the floor. Her voice was sharp and mocking. "If you want to play sick, then clean it up yourself." I stared at the pills rolling across the rug, each one representing relief I could barely reach, and felt humiliation burn through me. That evening, I was too weak to move, so I asked quietly if she could bring me a blanket. Instead, she snapped, "What do you think I am, your maid?" The words sliced into me because I remembered countless nights when I covered her with blankets during her fevers as a child, when I stayed awake with her after nightmares, when I whispered stories until she fell asleep. Now, those memories felt like cruel illusions replaced by her contempt. The final straw came when I struggled to the bathroom and nearly fainted in the hallway. I collapsed against the wall, calling her name in panic, but she appeared with folded arms and a sneer. "Stop exaggerating," she said. "You act like you are dying just to make me feel guilty." Her words were ice. I had been on an operating table just days earlier, my body still raw and fragile, and yet to her it was a performance, a manipulation. That was the moment I understood her cruelty was not temporary stress, but a choice, a deliberate refusal to see me as human. The slap had opened the door, and each small refusal since then proved that the bond I thought unbreakable was already shattered. I lay back on the couch, exhausted and trembling, realizing that every gesture of care I had once given her had been forgotten. All she saw now was a burden, an inconvenience she wanted gone. And as that truth settled over me, bitterness mixed with something stronger, a determination that this would not be the end of my story. Lying awake that night with my body aching, I drifted into memories that felt both comforting and cruel. I remembered being 15 years old, already working part-time at the diner on Main Street, slipping tips into an envelope marked for Hannah's books. Our father had vanished into another haze of liquor and strangers. So it was me who kept the lights on, me who signed school permission slips, me who learned how to cook simple meals just so Hannah would not go hungry. When she was sick with the flu, I stayed up through the night wiping her forehead, fetching water again and again without complaint. At 19, I gave up the chance to leave for college because Hannah wanted to go. I told myself it was fine, I could work, I could sacrifice, because one day she would stand on her own and maybe even take care of me. I dipped into the insurance money left after our mother died, the money that was supposed to give us both security. I told myself Mom would want Hannah to have her chance, that it was my duty to make sure she succeeded. When Hannah married and her husband lost his job, it was me again who wrote the check to keep them afloat. I sold my car so they could pay rent and buy groceries. When she dreamed of opening a boutique, I gave her what remained of my savings. She promised it was a loan, that she would return every cent, that she would never forget who made it possible. Years passed, and she never repaid $1. Instead, she came back for more each time, with the same smile, each time reminding me that family should help family. I believed her because I wanted to. When I had my first health scare years later, it was me who paid the bills. Hannah offered sympathy, but not money, not time, not effort. Still, I forgave her because I could not imagine life without her. And now, after this surgery, when I needed help the most, I saw the truth clearly. Every sacrifice I had made had not built love or gratitude. It had built entitlement. She did not see me as a sister who had carried her through storms, but as a resource, a well she could drain until it ran dry. The slap, the sneer, the cruel words were only the surface of something that had lived in her for years. I had refused to see, it refused to admit that the bond I clung to was one-sided. In the silence of that night, I faced the weight of all my choices. I had given her everything, and in return, she had given me nothing but scorn. My stomach throbbed where the stitches pulled tight, but deeper than the physical pain was the ache of realization. Love had not bound us. Obligation had enslaved me, and for the first time I wondered what would happen if I broke free. The morning after the slap should have been quiet, a time for healing, but instead it became the beginning of a darker chapter. I woke to the sound of the bedroom door clicking shut. When I tried to rise, I realized my phone was missing from the table beside me. Panic rose in my throat as I searched the blanket folds in the floor, but it was gone. Hannah walked in carrying a cup of coffee for herself, not for me, and when I asked where my phone was, she shrugged. "You do not need it. You need rest." Her tone was not caring, but sharp final, as if she had made a decision for me and expected no argument. Later, when I asked about my wallet, she claimed she had put it in a safe place. The words "safe place" sounded like a cage. By the afternoon, she had locked the cabinet where I kept the few important papers from our mother documents I had not looked at in years, but which always gave me comfort. I tried to question her, but she silenced me with a glare. "You are confused after surgery," she said. "The medicine is making you imagine things." Her words' twisted reality made me question my own memory, but in my heart I knew she was lying. When I tried to step into the kitchen to fetch water, she blocked the way with her body. "Sit down, Emily," she ordered. "The doctor said you should not strain yourself." Her lips curled in a smile that did not reach her eyes. She was not protecting me. She was controlling me. That evening, I overheard her on the phone whispering to someone saying I was weak, saying I might not last long. The way she laughed chilled me. She was already speaking of me as though I were gone, as though my life had no value beyond what she could take from it. I thought of the house around me, every brick paid for with our mother's insurance, the promise that it would keep us safe. Now it felt like a prison, each room closed off by Hannah's authority. She rationed my pills, claiming it was for my own good. She withheld food until she felt like cooking. At times, she would lean over me with false concern, brushing hair from my face, but her eyes held calculation, not love. When I protested, she said softly, "You are overreacting. You have always been dramatic. No one will believe your stories." Those words sank into me with a heavier weight than the slap had carried. I saw clearly now. She was not just cruel. She was rewriting the truth to make me powerless. The stitches in my abdomen throbbed with each breath, but the real wound was in my heart as I realized my sister did not want me to heal. She wanted me dependent, voiceless, and broken. And if I did nothing, she would succeed. I reached the edge of despair when a lifeline appeared where I least expected it. On the third evening after the slap, my childhood friend Claire stopped by unannounced. She had been texting me since the surgery but received no reply, so she decided to check in person. Hannah answered the door with a forced smile, telling Claire I was sleeping. But Claire insisted and pushed past her, walking into the living room where I sat pale and trembling. One look at my face told her something was wrong. She hurried to my side, asking why I looked so weak. I opened my mouth, but Hannah snapped that I was fine. Claire's eyes narrowed. She saw the untouched glass on the table, the empty pill bottle tossed in a corner, the bruise still faint on my cheek. She whispered, "Emily, are you okay?" My eyes filled with tears. I tried to speak, but Hannah barked at her to leave. Claire ignored her and held my hand. That single touch reminded me I was not crazy, not alone. When Hannah stormed into the kitchen, Claire leaned closer and told me to nod if I needed help. I nodded through my tears. She squeezed my hand firmly and mouthed the words, "I will be back." That night, I felt the first spark of hope since coming home. The next day, Claire returned with her cousin Michael, a lawyer known in town for standing up against abuse cases. He spoke calmly, asking careful questions while Hannah hovered nearby with hostility written across her face. Michael asked if I had access to my phone or money. When I shook my head, his jaw tightened. He explained that taking away those items could be seen as financial and emotional control, possibly even coercion. Hannah laughed and called it nonsense, claiming I was delusional from pain medicine. But Michael asked her directly if she had hit me. Her face flushed and she shouted that I was making up stories. That outburst told him everything he needed to know. Before leaving, he slipped me his card, instructing me quietly to hide it under the cushion. He said he would check in again soon and encouraged me to keep notes of every cruel word and denial of care. When Hannah saw him hand me something, she tried to snatch it away, but Claire blocked her with surprising force, saying Emily deserves privacy. After they left, Hannah hissed that I was betraying family. She threatened that no one would believe me, that everything I said would sound like a sick woman's fantasies. But deep inside, I now had an anchor. I had someone who believed me, someone who saw the truth. And with that belief, I began to plan. Each moment of cruelty no longer felt like a dead end. It felt like evidence. Every refusal, every insult, every lock of a cabinet became fuel for the fight ahead. For the first time, I saw a future where Hannah's control would crumble. And in that vision, a quiet strength began to grow inside me. From the moment Michael's card slipped into my hand, I began to view the house not as a prison, but as a stage where every act of cruelty could be recorded in my mind. Though my body was weak, my mind sharpened. Each time Hannah snapped at me, I memorized her exact words. When she rationed my pills, I carefully noted the times and amounts in the margins of an old magazine hidden beneath the couch cushion. When she locked my phone away, I marked the days on the back of an envelope I managed to keep in my pocket. Claire smuggled in a small recorder disguised as a keychain during one of her brief visits. She whispered, "Press here when she starts, then hide it again." My heart pounded with fear, but also with a new sense of control. The first night I used it, Hannah stood over me while I begged for water. Her voice filled the room, cold and sharp. "You can crawl if you want it." I pressed the button. The click was silent. Her words captured. The second time was worse. She hissed that no one would ever believe me, that I had always been dramatic, that I was pathetic for thinking anyone cared. Again, the recorder caught every syllable. My hands trembled as I switched it off, but deep down, a fierce satisfaction warmed me. Proof. Evidence. Truth she could not twist. Days passed, and my secret collection grew. I recorded her phone calls where she mocked me to her friends, saying I was milking the surgery for sympathy. I jotted down times she withheld meals, the way she moved my wheelchair just out of reach, the moments she deliberately ignored my pleas. Each note became a weapon, each recording a shield. At night, I whispered to myself that this was not madness, but preparation. I was building a case brick by brick. Hannah noticed my gaze was different and accused me of plotting. She cornered me once and demanded to know why I looked so calm. I lied that the medicine was making me drowsy, that I no longer cared. She smirked, satisfied, never guessing that beneath my calm exterior, I was gathering the very rope that would one day hang her lies in the light of truth. Claire continued her secret visits, slipping me extra food and checking my notes. Michael called once on the house phone while Hannah was out, reassuring me that he was preparing legal avenues, that once we had enough, we could act. I clutched the receiver with tears in my eyes, whispering thank you over and over. My body ached, my scar still raw, but my spirit was no longer broken. I had been stripped of dignity, yet in that stripped state I discovered resilience. Each cruel word from Hannah no longer pierced me. It strengthened my resolve. Because I knew one day soon those words would echo not in this house but in a courtroom where her mask would finally be torn away. The day of reckoning arrived sooner than I imagined. It was a Sunday afternoon when Hannah invited a few relatives and neighbors over, claiming she wanted to host a small gathering to celebrate my recovery. The irony cut deep. She dressed the living room with flowers and laid out snacks, pretending to be the devoted sister. I sat on the couch, pale but upright, every breath reminding me of the stitches still knitting my body together. Guests arrived, smiling, offering polite words about how lucky I was to have Hannah. She basked in the praise, nodding graciously, and every word of it burned like salt in my wounds. Then Hannah launched into her performance. She told them I had been dramatic, that I exaggerated my pain, that I made her life difficult with endless demands. Laughter rippled among the guests as she imitated my weak voice asking for water. My cheeks burned with shame, but I clenched my hands around the recorder hidden beneath my blanket. Claire had insisted I bring it to this gathering. Michael had told me moments like these were golden. As Hannah spoke louder, accusing me of manipulating her kindness, Claire caught my eye and gave the faintest nod. My heart pounded. My body trembled, but I pressed the button. The recorder in my lap began to play. Not silence, but Hannah's own words from nights before. The room froze. Her voice filled the air, cruel and sharp, saying, "You can crawl if you want it." Then another clip. "Stop exaggerating. You act like you are dying just to make me feel guilty." Gasps erupted from the guests. They looked at Hannah in disbelief. She lunged toward me, shouting to turn it off, but Claire stepped between us, her hand raised. "Let it play," she demanded. The next clip spilled out. "No one will believe you. You have always been dramatic." The room grew heavy with silence. My relatives stared at Hannah, their expressions shifting from confusion to horror. A neighbor muttered under his breath, "My God." Hannah's face turned crimson. She stammered that I had faked the recordings, that I had spliced words together, but Michael, who had quietly arrived with Claire, stepped forward and held up his hand. "Actually, I've verified these recordings myself. They are authentic." His voice was steady, authoritative. Gasps turned to murmurs. Hannah tried to laugh it off, but the sound cracked. In desperation, she shouted that I was trying to ruin her life, that I had always been jealous. But the room no longer believed her. The performance had collapsed. Her mask lay shattered on the floor for everyone to see. And in that moment, I felt a surge of strength stronger than any medicine. For the first time in years, the power was not hers. It was mine. The fallout from that confrontation was immediate. Hannah's shouting grew wilder as she realized the room no longer believed her, and when Michael calmly announced that her behavior could qualify as abuse, she lunged at him with fury. The neighbors gasped as she grabbed my arm, roughly shaking me, as if to force silence back into my throat. That was her mistake. Two neighbors, Mr. and Mrs. Lawson, stepped forward and pulled her away, horrified at the violence they had just witnessed in plain sight. Someone dialed 911. Within minutes, the flashing lights of a patrol car painted the walls of the living room red and blue. Two officers entered, their expressions stern as they surveyed the shaken guests, the scattered snacks, and Hannah standing rigid with defiance. Michael introduced himself and immediately handed over a small USB drive with copies of the recordings. He explained in calm detail that I had endured physical and emotional abuse while recovering from surgery, that Hannah had isolated me, withheld necessities, and now assaulted me in front of witnesses. The officers listened carefully, their eyes narrowing as guests stepped forward one by one. Mrs. Lawson swore she had heard the cruel recordings and seen Hannah shake me. Another relative testified that she had mocked my weakness moments earlier. Claire confirmed everything, her voice steady but full of quiet rage. The officers turned to me and asked gently if I wanted to press charges. My body trembled, fear pressing against my ribs. But then I remembered every sleepless night, every glass of water denied, every slap, every twisted lie, meant to convince me I was insane. I lifted my chin and whispered, "Yes, I want to press charges." Hannah exploded with anger, shouting that I was ungrateful, that everything in this house existed because of her. But Michael's calm voice cut through her rant. "Actually, counselor, that house exists because of their late mother's insurance, and it was Emily who preserved it, not Hannah." The officers exchanged glances, the weight of his words sinking into the room. They stepped forward, placed Hannah's hands behind her back, and recited her rights. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut was like a door opening inside me. Hannah struggled, screaming that she was the real victim, but her cries fell flat against the heavy silence of the witnesses who had seen too much to ever believe her again. As the officers led her outside, the neighbors followed, some shaking their heads, others whispering prayers. For the first time, I felt the air in the house change. The weight of fear lifted, replaced by a cautious hope. I was no longer a prisoner of her cruelty. I was a survivor with proof, with witnesses, and now with the law on my side. And deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning of the reckoning Hannah had brought upon herself. When the police car pulled away and the street grew quiet, I thought the worst was behind me. But Michael's expression told me another storm was waiting. He sat across from me in the living room, his briefcase resting heavily on his knees, and explained that during the arrest, Hannah had shouted something that caught his attention, the claim that everything in the house existed because of her. He asked if I still had the documents from our mother's life insurance. My stomach tightened because I remembered Hannah locking them away days earlier. Claire searched Hannah's bedroom and found the metal box shoved under the bed. Inside lay the policies, yellowed with age but still clear. Michael read carefully, his brow furrowing. Then he looked at me with a seriousness that made my chest tighten. "Emily, do you realize these funds were designated for both of you equally, but withdrawals over the years had been signed only by Hannah?" My breath caught. He explained that she had forged my signature to drain nearly half of the remaining balance after our mother's death. That money had financed her boutique, her husband's failed ventures, even the vacations she bragged about on social media. My hands shook as I stared at the papers, the proof of betrayal written in black ink. Memories cascaded through me every time she begged for help, every time I handed over cash thinking I was sacrificing for love. All along, she had already stolen from me. Michael's voice cut through my spiral. "This is not just a family dispute anymore. This is fraud. With your permission, we can open a civil case in addition to the criminal charges already underway." The room felt heavier than ever, but also brighter with truth. I nodded slowly, determination settling over me. For years I had believed my sacrifices kept Hannah afloat. Now I knew she had been sinking me while saving herself. When relatives heard the news, their faces paled. An uncle muttered that he had suspected something but never dared to ask. Claire squeezed my hand, whispering that justice was finally within reach. That night, I lay awake replaying Hannah's laughter, her mocking words, her slap, and now this, the theft of my future security. Anger pulsed through me, but so did clarity. She had tried to convince me I was weak, dependent, voiceless. But the truth revealed the opposite. She was the one dependent, leeching off my silence. And now her silence would be forced in court, where every forged signature would scream louder than her denials. The twist was cruel, yet liberating. She had not only hurt me physically and emotionally, she had stolen my inheritance. And that theft would ensure her downfall more completely than anything I could have imagined. The weeks that followed turned Hannah's life into the mirror image of what she had built for herself through lies. She entered the courtroom with the same defiance she had shown in my living room, her chin high and her eyes cold. But every step she took echoed with the sound of witnesses ready to speak against her. Michael guided me gently to my seat, reminding me that truth had weight, and today that weight was on our side. The prosecution presented the recordings first. Each cruel phrase that had once pierced my heart now rang out in the hushed courtroom, turning her voice into undeniable evidence. Jurors winced as they listened to her, mocking me, withholding care, dismissing my pain. Some shook their heads, others looked directly at her with disgust. Then came the testimony. Claire's voice trembled at first, but grew stronger as she described the control, the isolation, the slap. Mr. and Mrs. Lawson recounted the day they saw her shake me in front of neighbors. Relatives admitted how they had witnessed her twisting stories, blaming me, mocking my weakness. With each testimony, Hannah's posture stiffened until she no longer looked like the confident sister she once pretended to be, but like a cornered figure shrinking under the truth. The final blow came when Michael placed the insurance documents before the judge. He detailed the forged signatures, the withdrawals, the timeline that matched perfectly with Hannah's boutique opening and luxury expenses. He spoke calmly, methodically, and when he finished, the silence in the courtroom was absolute. Hannah tried to protest, claiming I had agreed that she had acted with my blessing, but when asked to show proof, she had none. Her words collapsed in on themselves. I sat quietly, my scar still aching, but my heart steady as stone. This was the moment years of sacrifice and silence had led to. The judge's ruling came swift and clear, guilty of fraud, guilty of assault, guilty of abuse. Sentencing would follow, but the verdict alone felt like sunlight breaking through endless storm clouds. Hannah's face crumbled. For the first time, she looked small, not because I was weak, but because she had been stripped of power. As the bailiff led her away, she turned her head and spat words about betrayal, but they carried no force anymore. The courtroom no longer listened. Her downfall was complete not by my vengeance, but by her own actions brought into light. And in that collapse, I finally felt free. After the verdict, silence lingered in my life in a way I had never known. It was not the heavy silence of control or fear, but the quiet of peace, the kind that follows a long storm. Relatives who once looked at me with pity or skepticism now approached with softened eyes. An aunt admitted she had believed Hannah's lies for years, but after hearing the truth, she realized how blind she had been. A cousin confessed he had laughed at Hannah's jokes at my expense, and now felt ashamed. Their words did not erase the pain, but they reminded me of something important. The truth once revealed has power to change people. Sitting at the dinner table weeks later, surrounded by a smaller circle of supportive family, I realized that family is not defined by blood alone. Family is built by those who stand by you, who see you clearly, who lift you when you fall. Claire, though not bound to me by blood, had become my truest sister. Michael, a man I barely knew months before, had become a protector of my dignity. Even the neighbors who testified had shown more loyalty than Hannah ever did. The lesson cut deep, but it was vital. Blood can betray. Kindness can save. I thought often about my mother, about how she had intended her insurance to keep us safe, to give us a future. Hannah twisted that gift into a weapon, but by uncovering the fraud, I restored its meaning. I used part of my rightful share to pay debts that had weighed on me for years, and another portion I donated to a local shelter for women who had suffered similar abuse. Handing over that check felt like closing a circle, turning my private nightmare into a public stand for others. Healing did not come overnight. I still woke sometimes to echoes of Hannah's mocking voice, still flinched when I heard footsteps in the hallway. But each time I reminded myself that those echoes were ghosts, powerless, now stripped of their grip on me. With therapy, with the love of Claire, and with the support of new friends, I began to build a new identity, not as a victim, but as a survivor who had faced cruelty and chosen courage. And in that rebuilding, I discovered a truth stronger than any wound. Resilience is the inheritance no one can steal. Hannah had tried to take everything, even my sanity, but what she gave me instead was clarity. Clarity that real family is chosen, that control can be broken, and that justice, though slow, is worth the fight. Standing outside the courthouse on the final day, I felt the weight of years fall from my shoulders. The air was crisp, the sun warm on my face, and for the first time in so long, I did not feel trapped in Hannah's shadow. Claire linked her arm with mine and whispered that my mother would be proud. Tears welled in my eyes because I knew she was right. This entire journey had not only been about surviving surgery or enduring cruelty, it had been about reclaiming the dignity stolen from me piece by piece. Hannah's sentence was more than a punishment. It was a declaration that what she did was wrong, that the world saw it and named it. That mattered. It mattered for me, and it mattered for anyone who has ever been silenced by family under the guise of loyalty. In the weeks that followed, I found myself breathing differently, walking differently, speaking with a steadier voice. I was no longer the sister who lay quietly after surgery while insults and slaps rained down. I was the woman who had faced betrayal, exposed lies, and demanded justice. And justice had come. The lesson I carried was sharp and clear. Family is sacred, but it is not untouchable. When love turns to control, when care turns to cruelty, silence is not loyalty, it is surrender. And surrender feeds abusers. Speaking up is terrifying, but silence is worse because it chains generations to the same cycle. By pressing charges, by exposing the fraud, I not only freed myself, I ended the pattern my sister had tried to pass on as normal. Healing became my daily practice. I started journaling each morning, writing down not just the pain, but the gratitude for Claire's courage, for Michael's persistence, for the neighbors who believed what they saw instead of what they were told. Gratitude even for my own resilience that I had not recognized before. In those pages, I built a new story, one where my voice mattered and my scars became symbols of survival, not shame. One evening, sitting by the window with the insurance papers now legally secured in my name, I whispered a quiet promise to my mother's memory. I promised that her sacrifice would no longer be twisted by deceit, that her gift would serve its purpose to protect and uplift, not control. That night, I slept without fear, without nightmares, only with the calm certainty that the cycle was broken. And to anyone listening now, I say this: if you are enduring cruelty and silence, remember my story. Remember that control shatters under truth, that evidence speaks louder than fear, and that courage, once lit, spreads like fire. I thought I was weak. I thought my silence was survival, but I was wrong. Survival begins the moment you decide to speak, and justice follows those who refuse to be silenced. That is the legacy I carry and the lesson I leave with you.